Life Management Science Labs would like to acknowledge that we live and produce this podcast on the traditional lands of the Wurundjeri people. We'd also like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands of our listeners and our international colleagues. We'd like to pay our respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. Hey everyone, and welcome to Raising Parents, the Parenting Science Insights podcast, produced by LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. We are champions of life management science, providing structured insights informed by science and inspired by practice on key aspects of conscious living. Each week, we bring you scientific and practical insights on each element with the expert knowledge of professionals in the field. I'm your host, Dina Sargeant. Let's get started. Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode. Now, co-parenting requires a strong and collaborative relationship between divorced or separated parents. When parents are actively working together, it creates a stable and nurturing environment for the children that are involved. Now, that is a huge statement, but how do you sort of bring that into a reality and create that nurturing space? Joining us today is Dr. Carol Hughes. A little background on Carol is that she is a psychotherapist in clinical practice, having worked with divorced couples and their children, and as one of the founding members of Collaborative Divorce Solutions, Orange County, California. Thank you so much for joining me, Carol.
Thank you, Dina, for having me.
Now, like I said, it is a huge statement to sort of wanting to create that space and sort of expecting that relationship between divorced couples to still be having that nurturing relationship and still having the focus being on the kids, especially if it's ended up in a negative way or if the relationship has reached an end and that's impacted either party negatively. How often do you sort of see cases where it's ended up not being the case, where they're able to create that nurturing environment as a whole family?
Well, in my practice, it's more common than not, sadly, because I do get referrals from our local court system. And the courts here, the judges here, really believe in the value of having parents work on their co-parenting relationship. And so they refer them to me and people like me who know how to help clients, help parents create this relationship that they may not even have had when they were married. Or some aren't married, they were never married, but they still have children. So it can be a completely new idea of a relationship with them, which is asking more of them to do by themselves without professional help.
Mm-hmm. Now, regarding your own interests when it comes to going into psychotherapy, what made you want to establish that relationship within divorced couples and sort of try to mediate when it comes to those relationships?
Well, actually, it's one of those things that I didn't seek, but sought me. I decided way early, like third grade or something, that I wanted to be a therapist, probably because my parents were divorced, but I never made that connection. And when I went through graduate school, I was determined I was not going to work with people going through divorce. Now, what happened is after about 15 years of working with clients, adults, and children, some of them started getting divorced, or I was working with children and their parents were getting divorced. And slowly they came to me, so to speak. The whole process came to me. And I found that I really liked it, probably because of my own parents' divorce was not a happy one at all. And but I still didn't realize that at that time. But I realized that I really enjoyed being a peacemaker, and that's one of that. In fact, my license plate on my car says peacemaker.
Oh, that is a cool trademark to sort of have on your car now.
And my divorce website, I have two websites. My therapy website, which is my name, drcarolhughes.com, and my divorce website, because they're two separate practices. And that one is called divorcepeacemaking.com.
Oh, wow. So that you've got that listed in as your personality as a huge peacemaker.
Yes. Yes.
No.
And you were asking about you mentioned mediation several times. Mediation and collaborative divorce, both the professionals that work in those two fields call themselves peacemakers. And
Oh.
but I had always focused on just being a peacemaker anyway, just in life. So it was a perfect fit that way as well. But that you'll hear that term, but from mediators, divorce mediators, and collaborative divorce attorneys and other professionals like me, mental health people.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Wow, that's a fun fact to sort of have
yeah,
to know
I
as
think
well.
so.
Yeah, no, I definitely think that's a fun fact. Now, it's incredible to talk about co-parenting in terms of, because my parents have divorced, but they've divorced after my sister and I have become adults. So later on in life, they've gone through that separation and realized that they saw each other in a different way. And they saw each other as just friends, especially after raising two kids all the way into adulthood. They sort of had that realization. But they're really, I think I've realized recently that they're really better off being friends, that they really still get along. They really do have that relationship. So for me, I think one of the biggest things when I sort of understanding the fact that they're going through that divorce, that I was kind of expecting the worst, because you hear about the worst. You hear about a lot of examples about parents who no longer talk to each other, parents who only talk through the children. And then I was like, oh, well, I'm going to have to be the one to talk between the two of them. But when I found out that they're actually getting along really well, I was quite surprised. And I think people around me were quite surprised as well, because they were also expecting the worst for that. But it was a really great change to sort of see the fact that they can actually get along and go through that happy divorce and happy separation in order to find out who they really are. So I'm really excited today to talk about so the other aspect to it, the aspect that I didn't get to see or I didn't get to face, and how that impacts children and adults of all ages who are sort of have their parents sort of separated either when they're younger or when they get to an older age.
Yes, yes. I was smiling when you were talking about your own parents' divorce because a few years ago in 2016, a reporter from the New York Times found me for some blogs I'd written about adult children whose parents were going through divorce. And
Mhm.
she was doing a series in the New York Times about that. So I wrote, she interviewed me and so forth. And then about 6 months later, an agent from a literary agency in New York, again, found me, came to me and said, there's nothing out there about adult children whose parents are divorcing.
Mhm.
She couldn't find any books or any articles. Would you be willing to write a book about it? And I said, well, sure. I didn't have any intention of writing a book about it. And what your parents did is the ideal. We talk in mediation and collaborative divorce. Don't you want to be able to dance at your adult children's wedding? They be friends, be
Mhm.
friendly, because that is what's best for kids.
Mhm.
So I'm actually glad that you don't have the experience that so many kids have and have had. And it
Yes.
does affect them all the way into adulthood. And we can talk about that as we go along.
Yes, for sure. And I'm really excited to hear that. It's amazing because I was actually looking for any kind of thing to see, because I never saw it happen. If my parents were to divorce, I would have expected it when I was a teenager or when I was younger. But when it happened as I got to my mid 20s, I'm sitting there like, there's nothing, no books on this, no articles on this. There's no experience that I've seen other people live throughout how to deal with it when I'm older, and how that sort of goes along as I get older. Because I'm not really having to go between mum and dad's house every week or having to split my time between the two. There's still trying to figure that out. So no, it's amazing that there's now that realization that there's no articles on there, there's no resources on it, but there's still it happening. We just don't hear about it
Yes,
as often.
yes. In fact, listen to this fun fact. It's not really fun, but the what we call the gray divorce, which is parents 50 and older, or
Mhm.
even 45 and older, is the fastest growing divorce rate in the world, worldwide, in industrialized countries. So I don't know when
Wow.
your parents divorced, but from 1990 forward, it's been growing, that divorce rate. and
Mhm.
it's the fastest divorce rate in the industrialized countries.
Wow. No, that's amazing because my parents divorced last just a year ago, so it's still
Okay.
fairly recent.
Yes, it is. Yes.
But it's yeah.
And the researchers that have done that research, not me, but the ones at universities, are predicting that divorce rate of that population will triple by
Wow.
2030.
Oh wow. No, that is it's a sad realization, but I think like I've seen my parents grow as people and I've seen them grow separately. And after especially after seeing them in the past year, I can see why they're not sort of have that connection that they used to do, because I think they're sort of under the fact that, oh, we want to stay together for the kids. If anything, we'll be together for the kids. So once the kids sort of separated, there's like, okay, we don't need to stay together just for them anymore.
Right. And though they're still co-parents,
Yes.
even though you and your sister are adults, and there are things that those parents need to work on as well. And
Yes,
we can
exactly.
focus on that or not, whatever you want to do. But yeah,
Yes.
and one last thing. Last summer, two young women, late 20 and early 30s, who are Germans, but they'd been living abroad, born abroad, and everything,
Mhm.
found the book and said it was the book that I co-wrote with a colleague, that it was part of their healing journey because they were adults too and their parents divorced like 7 or 8 years ago,
Mhm.
and they started a podcast.
Oh, wow.
Yes, it's called The Kids Are Not All Right, and interviewed my co-author on another date, and it's they're putting it out there to help other adult children, just as you were, who didn't know, where to go or find any information because they couldn't find any either until they stumbled upon the book.
Oh, that's incredible. And there, I'm really excited to talk about this and to also know that that's not uncommon. It's not something that I'm not the only person that's going through it. My sister and I are the only two siblings going through it in the world. It's still happening, and there's still that community that's
Hmm.
available there as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
Now,
Especially for the adult children,
yes,
because
exactly.
people think it shouldn't affect them.
Yes, exactly. It's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you're old enough, you can be able to handle it." It's like, no, it
Exactly.
still takes an effect. It still
Yes.
does have that emotion. I think even
Yes.
larger because we've grown about 20-25 years with thinking that they're
Hmm.
gonna last this forever time, this however long time.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. That's what a lot of adult children say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, I'm
Frankly,
glad to say that.
yeah, I have more to grieve than a 5-year-old because I've been in the family longer, kind of thing. Yeah.
Exactly,
Hmm.
exactly.
Yeah.
Now, before we get deeper into it, I'd love to get to know some of your interests and maybe some recommendations you can share with us today.
Sure.
Now, to start off with, do you have a favorite book that you could share with us?
Well, you know what? I'm what's called a bibliophile. I love books, so I don't have a favorite. But I was thinking about what we were going to be talking about today, and so I thought of when I was in my graduate school program, my first one. One of the founders of family therapy, her name was Virginia Satir, wrote a seminal book called Helping Families Change. And she was part of the movement in my field all those years ago, before I was involved, about looking at how families are affected by things that go on with one or more persons in the family. And she used the example of the family is like a mobile, that hangs above a child's crib,
Mhm.
and each animal represents a family member. And if you push the mobile, it goes like this. And notice all the family members move. And so that was a seminal idea about how anything that one person or more than one person in a family is experiencing affects everybody in the family, which is what divorce does.
Mhm. Well,
So that
that's
was my very first book that I really fell in love with. I
yeah.
mean, I like different novels and things, but to me and to your listeners, I want them to be open to understanding that divorce happens to children. They don't get a choice, right? It
Mhm.
happened to you, it happened to me. And if they are getting good grades in school, they seem adjusted, it does not mean that it's not affecting them. Because imagine that mobile again. inside they can be shaking like this and need to be able to talk to someone. As you said, you and your sister had no one to talk to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we sort of forget that. And I love the way that book sort of has that metaphor of that space that still needs to be able to have that conversation, even if they seem like they're okay, even if they're okay seeming like they have to shuffle between mom and dad each week or every couple of weeks. There's still that, okay, my parents are still split up. And I think it took me a really long time, even as an adult, to be like, oh, but the family didn't work out. The family's still not whole. Even though it's whole, it's still not whole. And so imagine an 8-year-old who's still trying to understand the fact that, oh, I only get to see mom or dad. Don't get to see mom and dad. And that's, I mean, I'm 26 and it still took me a while to get. Imagine an 8-year-old dealing with that. So
yes.
yeah. So
yes.
it's a huge concept.
It is. I've told parents for a long time, divorce leaves a hole in children. I'm not blaming. I lived it. But it's always there. It can never be 100% filled up, even when we marry and have kids of our own. It's a whole. You said the right word. We're a family apart, but we're still a family. And one of the saddest things I heard when I first started working with children who were going through divorces, I don't have a family anymore. Mm-hmm. But they do, and you knew that, but you were an adult. At least you had that awareness. But yeah, it is a family. It's a different family. It's reorganized. And one of the things parents need to do as co-parents, healthy co-parents, is to keep emphasizing to the children, we're still family, and even try to do some things like together, like show up for an activity at school, once a month, maybe at least, and put aside their personal differences and make it be about the children. Because I like to tell parents, kids have one childhood, one adolescence. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it can't be spent fighting between seeing the parents fight, who's going to be taking them over that weekend, or who's going to be at which game is going to be available to attend. So yeah, I think there's a whole lot that we forget. And I'm very aware of, and I think I read this somewhere, it's like your parents are still living their first life, which is they're still trying to build, they're still trying to understand where they want to be. Yes, they're meant to teach us something, but they're still trying to understand where they stand in their own life. So there's that sympathy, I think, all around, all fronts, that I think gets neglected quite a bit when it comes to that allowance of grief, or that allowance of the conversation to hit them emotionally.
Yes. And you mentioned grief. I'm glad you did. That's one of the things I wrote about in the book, is that most people don't get married as your mom and dad got married, thinking, oh, well, at this age, I'll be divorced. They have dreams and of how they think it will be at that age. And when that doesn't turn out, they are grieving. And it is important for their children, their adult children by then, hopefully, to realize that. And it's important for parents to realize the children are grieving too. The 5-year-old, the 8-year-old, the 15-year-old, the 26-year-old, as you are, because it's still a loss. It's still a loss.
Yeah, exactly. Now, how about a movie that you've recently enjoyed that you could share with us?
Well, I love history too. And so I thought about that one, and I would say that it was Oppenheimer, which was about one of the scientists, a physicist who helped develop the concept and for the atomic bomb, which was very poignant, a powerful and poignant movie. Yeah. And my other one that I couldn't not say was Schindler's List, because that was a powerful and poignant movie as well. I think we need to remember our history. So those two really stand out for me. And Amadeus, because I love classical music too. I couldn't just answer one.
No, it's hard to. I sometimes when I hear that question, I'm like, well, what movie would I have to say? And I think both of those movies, both Schindler's List and Oppenheimer, have such a huge impact on the way that we understand history, the way that we understand what was before us and what happened before us. And Schindler's List has always been impactful for me. Like, I can't watch that and be like, oh, I'm just going to watch it and just sit there and enjoy it, because it's not something you sit and enjoy. It's something you really have to study and analyze and look into, because it's just so much that can be said about it. You could write a whole thesis, I think, just on that
Oh,
film.
absolutely. Yes. Very powerful. Yes.
Yeah, so it's an amazing. So I'm so glad you brought that movie up. I think it's a movie that I think we forget and we don't talk about, or we don't hear about that often. So I love the fact that you were able to bring that up. Now, I hope you are well warmed up for the harder questions we're going to be looking into today. And hopefully, all those easy questions made it a little bit easier for our mouths to not get tongue tied as quickly as I have done a couple of times. Now, I know that everyone has a different point of view and different definition as to what parenting is and what it means to be a parent. What would your definition, either personally or professionally, be for what is enabling for a parent to be?
I would say number one, it's a lifelong job, a lifelong role. It doesn't happen when the children become adults. Yes, the relationship with the children changes when they're adults, but it's a lifelong. And one of the original researchers into families, Dr. Bowlby, who is from England, said, from the cradle to the grave, our relationship with our parents is just that, a very important relationship with our parents. Parents are tasked with taking care of the physical needs of the children, food, clothing, etc., their emotional needs, listening, supporting them, teaching them about life, teaching them about the values that go along with the parents' culture, or maybe a new culture they're living in if they're living in a new country.
Mhm.
Uh, Teaching them right from wrong, teaching them how to make decisions, uh, teaching them how to resolve conflict. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And being involved, that what Dr. Bowlby said about from the cradle to the grave, he was talking about attachment. We're attached to our parents. If you've ever known anyone who's 60 years old and their 80-year-old parent died, or 90-year-old parent, they probably shed some tears because that's of that bond. So I say it's the most important job, and many people think that anyone could ever have.
Mhm. Oh, I think it's a bond that I think a lot of us take for granted as we get older as well. Like, that relationship, it's like you just sort of expect them to be there, and you sort of expect them to have all the answers, to that you can rely on them, that you can talk to them. And it's something that we don't really understand until we get older. We don't really see any deeper until we get older. I know as a kid, I didn't really see it as, I'm like, oh, it's just mom. It's just dad being dad. It's just mom being mom. I think now I rely on them a whole lot more. I need that assurance from them a whole lot more than I ever did when I was younger, because they don't have the answers, but I think they have. I love the fact that they're able to say that they don't know.
That's a very good thing. That's a very
Yeah.
good habit for parents to admit, because
Yeah.
none of us is perfect, right?
No,
Yeah.
exactly. Exactly. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that bond is so important because it humanizes us as we get older. It humanizes the relationship as you get older, saying the fact that, the example, saying the fact that, oh, I don't know the answer to that. Let's go and figure that out, or let's go talk it over. Because I think as parents, especially when I was younger, my parent would always, mom or dad would always have the answer. They'd always know exactly what I'm supposed to do as a kid. And they're like, oh no, you need to get more sleep. You need to drink more water. You need to do all this. You need to take care of yourself. You need to do your homework. But as I get older, I realize now that they don't have the answers to everything. And I treat them just as much as I treat any other person who's trying to figure out the world, who's trying to figure out what they're supposed to be doing as well. And that bond, I think, is just as important as you get older, or even more important as you get older as
Mm-hmm.
well.
Mm-hmm. And Dina, when parents say, I don't know the answer, it helps build trust, because it's important that kids start to see their parents as people,
Mhm.
besides just their parents. And trust is earned. Not all parents think that, but that's how our kids really learn to trust us at a deep level, is that we're honest with them. I mean, they don't know every single thing that we experience, of course, but when we can admit that we're wrong, we don't know something, we apologize for something that we did, and that's part of building a healthy bond, is that kids can trust us. And when parents go astray, they have an affair, it ends up in divorce or whatever, that really affects children, and it can destroy, or if not damage, that attachment bond very severely. And that's an important part that a lot of co-parents don't understand. And they need to be helped to understand that and work on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kids don't just trust a parent just because they're the parent.
Yeah. And I think especially when it comes to divorced parents, and I know I've had this conversation with a lot of my friends, because a lot of my friends' parents are divorced from when they're a younger age, and they trust their parents less after the divorce because they're like, well, you couldn't get this relationship to work. So how do you have the answers if you're not able to have the answer to your own relationship? So that trust between them is already fractured because it's like, well, you couldn't make this perfect. You said that we would always be a family, and that was a lie. So how could I trust you there in anything else? So it's interesting how they internalize that, and how kids sort of remember that aspect and remember the fact that, okay, you said this to me a couple of years ago, and you said that you would always. So that means if you said that you'll always love me. Is that true? Like, does that still mean the same thing? Is that still impactful? And we don't realize, especially as parents, you probably don't realize the fact that they do internalize that. They do sort of take that to heart. And it's not a child making the divorce about themselves. It's the child sort of having that expectation of, well, you said this, but it didn't work out. So
Right.
what else are you saying that isn't going to work out? What else are you saying that isn't true?
Yes. Yes, you got it. Exactly. You said that very well. That's part of the trust issue. Yeah.
Yeah. So how important is that bond still sort of as a family, to sort of reiterate the fact that we are still a family? We are still the kind of people that you can rely on, the kind of parents that you can sort of trust. How important is having that conversation with the child?
It's very important. And what's even more important than having the conversation is being part of their lives so that they live it. They live that you're there. They live that they can trust you. They live, if you say you're going to be at their soccer game, you are there. I mean, things happen, a car breaks down or whatever, but their lived experience is a lot more important than the words that parents say. Can parents hurt them with words? Absolutely. And if they live so that the children can trust them, as we were just talking about, that can um, mend when there has been trust broken in other ways. And divorce breaks a lot of trust bonds. It really does. So it's not an easy job that co-parents have. And the word co-parent was coined out of the divorce world. We've always just said parents, right? But I tell parents, you've always been a co-parent. You just didn't think of it that way.
Yeah.
Now you really have to think of it that way, because it's important for the children that they feel that bond. They feel the stability, that like you're their safety net. The parents are their safety net still, even when the parents are divorced.
No, I think because I've heard that a couple of times when it comes to no matter what parent type you are, parent version you are, you're still always a co-parent. Is that something that's becoming more common terminology to use in terms of parenting?
I think so, from what I've read in the research. And I don't really, if I ever knew when that term came up, co-parent, I don't recall. But I would say, even with what I'm seeing just in my clinical practice and what I read in the research is that more and more parents are aware of that. And there are a lot of books out there about co-parenting. It's in the title somehow. There are a lot of podcasts about co-parenting, online classes, a lot of which I refer my clients to because I want them to have other resources besides just me. That's one way that I help them learn and grow. So it is a much more common term, I would say, even than 20 years ago.
Wow. No, it's amazing how far it's come in sort of growing that individual empowerment of a parent. And I think when you see parents, you sort of see them as one duo sort of hit together, but you forget that it's two individual people sort of raising, and they both have different parenting styles as well. And even after divorce, like when it comes to those parenting styles, how can co-parents sort of navigate those individual expectations on how they want the child to be raised, but still somehow come to a good unison between the two?
Yes, that's a very that's a very good question and a difficult journey for parents
Yeah.
because typically people don't get divorced because they're so much alike and can communicate very well, right? That's some of the reasons why people aren't together.
Hmm.
And mistakenly, a lot of people when they are going through divorce and then get divorced think, okay, now I can be that parent I wanted to be. And now I don't have to listen to that other parent, like my co parent. And that doesn't work for the kids so well.
Hmm.
Kids can adjust to different parenting styles. However, the research shows 30 years worth of research that if the more similarities they can have, the better it is for the kids because it's like that safety net is made out of all the same material. Now, I realize that's an idealistic way to look at co-parenting, but we know that for sure from the research, and there's not a lot of research I could say in my field that's for sure, absolute. But this one is the higher the conflict, which is the more the parents disagree about things, the less the kids are able to adjust well
Hmm.
because they don't have the tools and skills, the children, to adjust to the conflict.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of adults avoid conflict, right? And
Yes.
so the kids used the word earlier today, internalize. A lot of the kids internalize that conflict. They become, that their parents have the conflict, they become depressed, anxious. They're afraid to tell their parents how they feel
Hmm.
because they think parents are right. They're these big grown ups, right? As compared
Yeah.
to the child. And now teenagers are a little more willing to speak up and say, but not all of them are. A lot
Hmm.
of them will still internalize that conflict. So if I have one message to the listeners today is if you have a high conflict or even medium conflict co-parenting relationship, please work with someone, get professional help. I can give books, titles of books, that you guys can post if you do that, and to help people because there are a lot of really good books and research out there to help co-parents because the whole idea is to make it better for the kids. As I said, they have one childhood, one adolescence. That's it.
Hmm. No, it's a very important role to play as a parent as well, to sort of balance the fact that you are also grieving for that divorce, you are also grieving for that separation, but you still have to be there for the child and still make sure that they don't forget the childhood. They don't want to forget their childhood. You want them to remember and enjoy and look back on it 10 years later and be like, well, I had a great childhood. Even though both parents went together, they still made it work because they knew how important it was for me. They knew how important it was for to hold that relationship, to hold that impression of a great life and have that viewpoint. So I think we forget as well, because I definitely forgot. I had this conversation with my mom a couple of months ago of when they split up, it was still me grieving for the fact, but it was still also her grieving for the fact that they did split up, that they made it almost 30 years and they didn't work. And it was, they were coming up to that, we were planning what they were going to do for their 30th anniversary. And then suddenly it's like, well, they didn't make it there. So it's still not something that you want to hear, but I definitely can see how important it was for the both of them. And I can see that as a 25-year-old. But to see a lot of couples not make it past 5 years or not make it to 10th year and try to figure out how to balance it, it must be such an emotional part to it. Now, I do want to know, like we're saying that it has so many strong different emotions that sort of come about. How can parents manage their own emotions, but also prioritize their well-being for their child?
That's a very good question. And what we know from the research is that when parents are going through divorce, even if it's the most peaceful process like mediation or collaborative divorce, which
Mhm.
are newer the last 30 or 40 years, they're not doing the bloodbath that's so common in litigation. Even if it's the most peaceful process, it's stressful for the parents, very stressful. It's still a legal process
Mhm.
throughout the industrialized world. And that's stressful. Even lawyers say they don't want to go through a divorce, or a
Yeah.
litigation because it's so stressful. And it's stressful on the kids. So where I was going was what the research shows is that parents are they're not at their best when they're going through divorce because of the stress, and that impacts their parenting, their ability to be the best parents,
Mhm.
which most parents want to be the best parents they can be. So your question is very important. So then what do the parents do to manage their emotions and manage that stress? They shouldn't rely on their kids to do that, obviously. Even adult children, they shouldn't rely on them. There are
Mhm.
all kinds of support groups. There are things to read, as I said. There's mindfulness practice. There is, which is kind of like meditation, but it's not religiously based,
Mhm.
um, and very, very powerful. If someone looks up benefits of mindfulness practice on the internet, there are over 50 benefits,
Mhm.
uh, which I won't go into, but it's very, very, very helpful. There are apps like Calm, which I refer people to. Another one's Insight
Yeah.
Timer. Those are both outstanding. They're very low cost. Working with a therapist on their own or a clergy person. Many of the clergy are trained in helping people going through divorce. They need more usually than talking to their best friend.
Mhm.
Usually they need some other help. There are podcasts, like what you're doing. There are all kinds of podcasts about divorce and how to cope and, be kind of hold yourself together, let me call it, when you're going through. Listen to this. The research is that divorce is the second highest stressor that humans ever experience, second
Wow.
only to death of a loved one.
Wow.
So, I mean, that's huge. So,
Yeah.
parents shouldn't feel bad that they're stressed, and they don't know and they lose it. They're angry at their child when they're really not angry at the child. They're angry at what they're going through and what's going to happen financially. And are we going to be able to keep the house? I mean, the list goes on and on.
Mhm.
So, it was a very important question that you asked. I'm
Yeah.
glad you asked it.
No, I'm glad I asked it too. Now, I did want to ask because I've recently learned about mediation, recently learned about its importance. But one of the facts that I did was really surprised by is that both parties need to accept the mediation. It can't just be like a court ordered one person. You have to speak to the other person. You have to have that. How important, like the amount of emotional damage that it has if one party doesn't want to talk to the other. What is the process that happens if the other party doesn't want to talk?
Yes. Well, mediation, as I said, has been around 40, maybe I've lost count, but a good 40 years
Mhm.
throughout most of the world. And it is an out of court process. And there's an attorney who's the mediator. Typically, there are a few other professions who mediate, but because divorce is a legal process, I always encourage people to work with an attorney mediator because they know
Mhm.
the law and
Yeah.
it's a legal process. Um, However, many mediators, and attorneys included, have way beyond training than what they've just had as a litigating attorney, how to help that person that is resisting working in mediation, how to help them realize that it would be best for him or her and also best for their children. So that's a plug right there for people that have a lot of advanced training, like I do. I joke I have enough for probably 2 or 3 more doctorates, all the training I've done to work in the divorce field, way beyond my therapy practice.
Mhm.
So it's a very good question. Sadly, sometimes um, it won't work because the person who is not willing to participate in mediation, he or she thinks the only answer is to go through the court system. That's where they end up.
Hmm.
And it's really sad because it's way more expensive than mediation. And all that money they're spending, they could use on their kids.
Yeah. No, because when I found that out, I found it incredible at the fact that both parties need to say yes to it. They can't just be like, okay, you need to talk with them. You need to have that discussion.
Hmm. Right.
Both sides need to have that understanding.
Right.
Both sides need to
Yes.
have that agreement. And
Yeah.
that's such a huge impact on the child if one party doesn't want to participate, even in a conversation
Hmm.
with the other parent.
Right. Yes. Yes. It's a voluntary process.
Hmm.
And it's out of court. It's just as legal as court, of course.
Hmm.
And the papers are finally filed in court. It's confidential in most jurisdictions. So the majority of the mudslinging that sometimes happens in, litigation
Yeah.
is not in the documents. So that protects kids, because I know in the United States and probably most industrialized countries, I'm guessing, uh, the divorce papers, all the documents are public record.
Hmm.
And so years later, kids could go and read what all the horrible things their parents said about each other.
Yeah.
So again, mediation is a more peaceful, um, integrity, dignity, respectful process. Um, People get married because they love each other, usually, or they like sex or whatever reasons, and then they have children. And one of the things that the kids have said, I've heard all my time working with children and adult children, I ask them, what is one thing that your parents could do to make your life better? Almost 100% of them say, stop fighting. And then some will say, and they might already be in litigation, but they can always change if they want and go to mediation. And some kids will say, I want to tell them, you loved each other once. I want you to love me more than you hate my other parent.
Hmm.
That's powerful. I've had
Yeah.
6 and 7 year olds tell me that.
Yeah. Ugh, that's a really difficult thing to even process. That right now is a really difficult, because it's just like, well, it's true. If that 6-year-old can go tell you, you did care about each other once, you had me for a reason, I was there for a reason, I was there out of love. It was, and now it's suddenly, well, now you hate each other and now you want nothing to do with each other. So when it comes to mediation, what is the common conversation that does usually happen, and what is sort of resolved within mediation?
That's a good question too. The parents can. I can't speak for every jurisdiction,
Yeah.
but I can speak for the United States, which is, I'm guessing, is the same throughout the industrialized world. The mediator helps them identify the topics
Hmm.
that they want to have included in their final judgment, like what is going to be their co-parenting plan and the schedule that the children will follow and the parents will follow.
Hmm.
What about all their assets and debts? Um, um, it's usually about money and kids, frankly. But
Okay.
if there's inheritance or how is that dealt with in each jurisdiction and all. So any topic can be dealt with in mediation. It's just an out of court process.
Hmm.
And most mediators, not all, but most have been litigators. They've been in the adversarial process. So they know how the court system works too. And they have training how to be a mediator, and many jurisdictions certify mediators. Some don't, but
Hmm.
it's good to make sure you check the credentials before you just go. A barber could be a mediator, but not have any training in some
Yeah.
jurisdictions.
Yeah. Okay. And that's an interesting. So as long as this person is there to sort of, in some jurisdictions at least, to sort of make sure an unbiased member of the
Yes, neutral. Yes,
neutral member. Yeah.
neutral. Yeah, and they have the
Okay.
training. The training is very important.
Okay.
So if someone's looking for a mediator, they should ask to see their CV, their curriculum vitae. Read about where they got their training. If there's a certification program in their jurisdiction,
Hmm.
better if the person's certified, because they would have done more training, more studying, all of that.
Hmm.
So
Okay. Perfect. No, that's a really great, because I've always been interested in learning about mediation and learning and understanding it. But I'm so glad I've had the person on the show today to ask about it. Now, this leads us really well into the next part of the show, which is the practice and habits. Now, what is a practice that you do to build your own autonomy?
Well, I practice mindfulness as well,
Mhm.
and I've studied with different people throughout the U.S., excuse me, and some from other countries about how to practice mindfulness. I mentioned it earlier, so I won't re-say that. And it really helps us stay centered. If we get off balance, so to speak, emotionally or mentally or physically, it's a practice that helps us come back to our center. It's been shown to improve creativity,
Mhm.
empathy, boost the immune system, help sleep. I mean, the list goes on and on.
Mhm.
So, and then did you know you can do mindfulness walking, mindfulness gardening,
Wow.
mindfulness listening to music? It doesn't have to be, sitting down as you see the yogis doing and going, oh, I mean, that is a kind of mindfulness, but
Mhm.
it can be lots of different things that people don't think about. So it's
Okay.
it's it's just such a good practice to help
So it's sort of
people
getting
in all walks of
lost.
life.
So
Yes,
it's just getting lost in your own world a little bit. It's sort of just
yes,
recuperating from the day.
exactly, exactly.
Mhm.
Yes. And recharging our batteries is another way to think of it.
Mhm.
Lowering our stress level. It's really a very powerful practice.
No, that's it's an amazing how easy it is to do as well. It's just sort of the idea. I think a lot of, especially me, when I think of mindfulness, I think of yoga, I think of meditation. But because you're saying that you can do it at any point, you can do it anything that you love doing. It doesn't have to be sitting down in a quiet room and just being by yourself and just sitting quietly. It can be listening to music and getting lost in the music. It could be just doing things that you enjoy, but really being present in that.
That's it. Yes.
Mhm.
For example, mindfulness walking, it's a focus. Whatever mindfulness you're practicing, it's what are you focusing on?
Mhm.
And the thing about clear your mind, let all your thoughts go away, that's old school stuff. And people resist that. It's just like if you're walking, just feel your body, feel your arms and your legs going back and forth. Notice just focus on your body and make sure you don't cross the street if a car's coming. But it's simple as that. It's as
Mhm.
simple as that.
Well, that's great. Now, what are some challenges that you found can come up when you go through the practice?
Well, early on, I mean, I started. This is no, I'll just say, I was in a 10th grade in high school, and I became fascinated with hypnosis, and
Mhm.
so I was always, leaning in that direction. So I didn't have the issue that a lot of people have of, as I said, clear your mind, let all those thoughts just float through. That's what a lot of people do have trouble with, and they give up.
Mhm.
So I'll just talk, I guess, for other people because I'd studied hypnosis, self hypnosis. I already knew because mindfulness grew out of hypnosis practice, except in the other countries like the Asian countries have practiced and native cultures have practiced mindfulness for millennia.
Mhm.
Or they just called it different things. So I haven't really had issues with that were challenges. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Well, that's good. That's a really good thing to have. I don't think a lot of people have that same lack of focus. A lot of people have that lack of focus when it comes to mindfulness. So, no, it's important that you're able to, it's great that you're able to sort of separate that a little bit.
right. And even just breathing can be a
Mhm.
mindfulness practice, even if you're just doing it when you're falling asleep at night.
Mhm.
Just breathe, see how full you can get your lungs, count to whatever number, hold it for one or two, three, four counts, blow out through your mouth and slowly in, slowly out. That's a mindfulness practice.
It's amazing how easy it is. I think it sounds easy, but when you're going through it on a day, I think the hard part is being consistent with it, is to
Very
keep
true.
going with an everyday
Yes.
life and then suddenly you're having to breathe for a little bit.
Yes. 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 Sometimes at a stoplight, I'll do a couple of really deep breaths. If I find myself thinking about something that's stressing me out a little bit, I'll just
Mhm.
like, okay, just no. I keep my eyes open so I can see when the light changes, but I'll just take some deep breaths and it the research in our physiology is that it can shift our state, the state that our body is in, very quickly.
Hmm. That's perfect. No, I love hearing about it, and I love sort of seeing different experiences because I've heard mindfulness as some of practice that other guests have done previously, but it's very different to what you're saying. So it's making it seem a little bit easier to sort of actually manage to keep
Right.
doing, which is great.
Yeah, right. And you can go much deeper. I was just going to say there are a lot deeper ways to do it, but I don't want people to be scared away from it, because it's such a powerful practice, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be all that complicated.
Yeah, it's
That's why
not a
the
do or
apps are
die
good.
kind of thing.
No, exactly. I've told my clients for years, even before there were apps, I
Mhm.
had CDs that I would loan to them, because
Oh,
most people
wow.
in the beginning need to be led.
Mhm.
And so if you hear someone's voice and you breathe in a cadence that they're teaching and all, most people, that is a good question about the challenge. Most people don't understand that if they when they start out, if they're led, it's better, it's easier. They
Mhm.
try to do it all by themselves, which is why the apps are good now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the apps definitely do help. And I have used Calm a couple of times. I think it does work really well. It's a really great app to sort of keep focused. So, yes, if anyone's interested in the app, I think that's a great recommendation. I think we both can agree on that.
Yeah, yeah. And they're also, even on YouTube, there are like Tibetan bowls. There are Tibetan priests that play those bowls,
Yeah.
and you just listen, and it's very powerful because the sound goes into our body, and it helps. It reverberates throughout our body, resonates. So there are a lot of different ways. It can be something you see, what you hear, smelling. Some people put candles on and they focus on the fragrance.
Mhm.
It's simple focusing.
Yeah. No, it sounds so simple. I'm definitely going to have to practice it a little bit more for sure.
Well, practice does help, yes.
Yes. This leads us really well into the next part of the show, which is the open mic. Now, this gives you a chance to talk
Okay.
about anything that you are passionate about. It doesn't have to be related to the topic. So, in the last minute or so, I'd love to give you the floor and hopefully share what's on your mind with us.
Oh, goodness. So, what I'm passionate about is peace, obviously, from what I've said earlier, and how to help people find more peace. In fact, this tagline on my email address says, my signature says, creating more peace in the world, one person, one couple, one family at a time. And I believe that if we stayed focused on peace, then that would really help us in the world. And one of the questions that we didn't get to was, who's your role model? And I had to think for a minute, who would I say? And I said the Dalai Lama, because he's done so much to teach people about peace. And then he, a number of years ago, started working with companies and teaching companies, businesses,
Hmm.
how to have peace in their businesses and how to help their employees have peace. And my favorite sayings that he has is, if you're talking, all you're doing is saying what you already know. If you're listening, you may learn something.
Wow. No, that is a great kind of wordplay on that and gets you to think quite a
Mm-hmm.
bit.
Yes.
No, it's interesting because I think, especially when you're talking a lot, especially me being on a podcast and I'm trained to talk constantly, I'm always hearing for the next thing to say. I'm always hearing for the next reply that I can make. But sometimes I sit there and I'm like, you guys don't see it when it's being edited, but you can see me sort of sit there for a second and really try to understand what is being said so I can take it all in. So yeah, no, I think that's an amazing concept to sort of bring forward. And it's a perfect way to sort of end the show as well, and sort of what other audience members need to focus on a little bit more, which is listening. And I think especially in co-parenting situations, that is a big part of it, as well as listening as to what the other person wants or what the children are needing, and just paying close attention to that.
Yes. Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
that's
There's another
perfect.
another quote that I like. It's not attributed to Dalai Lama, but it's the problem with listening is that most people aren't. They're listening and thinking about what they're going to say, just similar to what Dalai Lama said.
Yeah.
How they're going to respond.
Yeah.
Which isn't listening at all, really.
No, it really isn't. And I think we forget that quite often as well. We listen to what to say next and what we can argue with the next time that they speak, but we're not really listening to understand the other person. So I think it's definitely something that we as a whole society have definitely been understood to be able to do. We're good at arguing, but we're not good at really hearing the other side.
Yes. There are two books that are favorites that I've recommended for years. They're classics in the field. I've recommended them to parents. One's called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and How to Listen So Kids Will Talk. And then the sequel was How to Talk So Teens Will Listen and How to Listen So Teens Will Talk. And people who have adult children could certainly read those and still benefit from them.
Because it still works around.
Listening is not a skill that we've developed very well, we humans, most of us, I think.
No, I definitely can agree to that. Now, thank you so much, Carol, for joining me on the show today and talking about
it's a pleasure.
Co-parenting and helping a lot of us understand what the importance of having that relationship is with the child and with the other co-parent as well. Whether you're divorced, separated, or happily married, you're still co-parenting. And I think that's a great thing to establish here today. Now, if our audience members would like to find out a little bit more about you, is there a place that I can send them over to?
Sure. My therapy website is drcarolhughes.com. No punctuation, all lowercase. And my divorce website, because it's a different practice, is divorcepeacemaking.com. And they can contact me via that. My email address, again, is all lowercase, no punctuation, dr, and then carolhughes@me.com. I'm on LinkedIn, and the book is on Instagram. The name of the book I keep referring to is Home Will Never Be the Same Again. A guide for adult children of gray divorce. And my therapy practice is also on Instagram. It's Dr. Carol Hughes.
Oh, perfect. Well, I'll definitely have the links down to all of those below for anyone who wants to access them and maybe ask Carol for any advice, or maybe send her an email and say that you've watched the show and tell her and let her know if there's anything that you want to talk about. She's definitely sent her email over, so I'm going to assume that she's eager to hear from you guys.
I will answer personally, yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much again, Carol, for joining me on the show today.
Dina. Yeah, thanks for having me. Yes.
And I hope the audience learned as much as I did when it comes to co-parenting and building that strong bond and having that relationship. I'll see you all in the next episode.
Bye for now.
You've been listening to Raising Parents, the Parenting Science Insights podcast, produced by the Parenting Science Labs, a division of LMSL, the Life Management Science Labs. More episodes are available from 10 life management perspectives and can be found by searching LMSL on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and other podcasting apps available on your devices. If you enjoyed this episode, please consider rating our show, sharing it, and subscribing to our channel, as it helps other people find it so that we can grow and bring you more quality resources. More of our work can be found on our website at pa.lmsl.net, where you can join our movement. I'm Dina Sargeant. Thanks for tuning in.